Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being brave enough to come on here and talk about your experiences today. You're all neurodivergent, and you would be talking about that. And of course, before I start and say anything else, that everybody who is watching this must absolutely remember that everything is confidential that actually is spoken within this Zoom room, and that you will be only actually happy to report anything that you know that they'd actually be okay for you to say. Apart from that, please say nothing. So why have I decided to get these lovely people, lovely folks on here to talk about what it's been like for them as people who are neurodivergent? It's really important. And what is so always made me so angry and sad is that we keep talking about this client group as non-compliant, as treatment resistant. Non-compliant, treatment resistant. And my hope is that as we finish this today, and as people see this, that will not be a word that will ever be bantered around again, because we have to work with the client in a person-centered way. We have to meet the client. And I don't mean the core Rogers, the Rogerian, although of course we will abide by that, absolutely. I'm talking about finding a person, because doing this job for so many years, and I believe passionately that if you hit everyone with a hammer, they will all look like a nail, which is why we have to make the treatment to the clients. Okay. So, and I will also say that some people may not stay for the whole Zoom meeting. They may, one thing about autism in particular is that feeling of overwhelm. So if someone decides to take themselves off, that is absolutely fine. They may come back, they may not. And because there is that something that true overwhelm, and which people who are autistic will pay a high price for the next day. So people go to parties and they push themselves to go out, but my goodness, they may absolutely collapse the whole of the next day and not return for a while. They need to recover. So if I can ask, I'm going to get my magic clock and I'm going to put it for 7 minutes, Belinda. And I'd like you just to say how it is for you and what you want to have differently. As I get to a minute, I will tell you that we have 1 minute to go, and then it will ring a bell at that time. So we can just so we can keep ourselves all boundaries and on time. Over to you. And if I can help in any way, I'm here.
Yeah, so I guess to start off with, it's probably useful to go through some background. So currently, I am married. I have 4 kids, so they keep me really busy. And I'm studying at university. As well as that, I've got various other chronic health conditions going on. And I guess a lot of my life, and especially over the last several years, has been in a constant state of overwhelm. I started off having disordered thoughts about body image when I was about 5 years old, and then started with an eating disorder when I was 12. Things progressed with that, and had depression and anxiety, and this was all happening through my teenage years. And I ended up under a psychiatrist and in therapy, but nothing was said about any potential neurodivergence, and I don't know whether it would have been said at the time. I don't know how much it would have been thought of. And it was only as I started doing the training with the National Centre for Eating Disorders, I'm a trainee therapist myself, and doing the Lifeline with you, Bernie. And one of the earliest things you said to me was, you could be neurodiverse. And I was like, okay. I just had one child diagnosed with autism. So I thought, well, that makes sense. There's going to be some genetic component somewhere, so I could be that person. And then so I started looking at my life in different ways, and especially over the last 7 years when I relapsed, eating disorder my anorexia came back again. And I've been under the constant care of a psychiatrist and in therapy for years and years, but never quite got where I needed to be because I did a lot of avoidance. And like, I don't think my therapist quite appreciated that I could be neurodivergent. So different strategies were looked at. So my previous therapist, she used to say to me, why can't you just eat? Why can't you just be robotic with it? Why can't you, meal plan? Okay, it's overwhelming, but it's going to be overwhelming, but just sit down and put a few meals together. And I couldn't. It was just too much, and it was paralyzing me. And I was getting like overwhelmed so much constantly because I have such a demanding life. Like, there's only so much room and so much I can take, and then it sends me into a constant state of overwhelm. So after seeing you and starting with a therapist with the National Centre for Eating Disorders, and her also saying, have you thought about being neurodivergent? I'm like, gosh, this really makes a difference. I need to start looking at my life in a way that, I could possibly be neurodivergent. And actually, my experiences and what I'm feeling are really valid. It's not me, because I have been so critical about myself. I'm really punishing, going, well, it's my fault that, I struggle in social situations. It's my fault that, I can't cope with change. It's my fault that I can't do what I need to do to, recover from an eating disorder. Everything is my fault. Whereas actually, if I take that kind of look at myself, if I'm neurodivergent, I can't help that. That's me. And how can I use that then to work to help me live my life better, to recover? And I think that's really important. Like, my therapist and like you held it in your mind that, could this person be neurodivergent? If you don't have that openness, that receptiveness to it, then there's a good chance you're not going to realize your client is neurodivergent. They might not be aware of it. They might have made their way through life like I have, and under this constant cloud and being so self-critical and struggling to cope with the world around them. But actually, like, a therapist being aware of it and saying it, and then looking at life through a different lens, and then how can we work with that? It's such a huge thing, like being with the person with where they're at. So it's overwhelming recovering from an eating disorder, but even more so if you're neurodivergent and you get overwhelmingly paralyzed easily, even just by small changes. So it's, like I said, just being with the person, slowing down, attaching no blame if, not able to progress as quickly as you might like. Okay, food diaries are just horrendous. I've never been able to do them. I'm now doing it on an app, which is easier, but I can only access certain parts of that app because it's just going out of my comfort zone and involving too much extra stuff that my mind can't take. So it's having that awareness of that I'm not purposefully not engaging with part of the app, which my therapist can see as well. Like, it's just me managing the best I can, but not being punished for that either, not being criticized for it. And I think that's just so important, really.
So vital, Belinda, so vital. We really have to be aware of how difficult it is to do what we ask of people, and how we can find ways around that.
Yeah, and it's not their fault. It's really not their fault. And at the same time as you're going, you're doing eating disorder therapy, you've just found out that you could be neurodivergent. You're looking at yourself in a whole different light, revisiting your history in a whole different light. So that's a whole other set of overwhelming issues that come up. So it could slow everything down. It might put a stop on things for a bit.
So we have to work at the pace, and I'm aware we've literally just got another few seconds. So anything you'd like to say as we come towards the end before the bell goes?
Yeah, I also think that the therapist should, wonder whether they might be neurodiverse. I'm from a person-centered background, so these conditions of worth, these introjects that you look at during personal development, could that be more than just some criticism?
Absolutely. And honestly, Belinda, every time I train, I'm astonished of how many people recognize neurodiversity within themselves. Thank you so much. That was so useful. And I'm going to put it back on again. Thank you. To another set. See, I'm getting the hang of this one. Another 7 minutes. Thank you. Who's going to go next?
I'm happy to go next.
Oh, there you go, Sophie. Off you go. And so once again, before we go on with Sophie, I've done a breakthrough on practically everyone on this, or break transformation they call it. And one thing that struck me on each and every one is, which is so important for me to say, is that I've worked for so many years with people who have been given all sorts of diagnoses: EUPD, emotional unstable personality disorder, used to be PPD. And Sophie came to see me, as did Belinda and as did Ross. And basically, I was convinced within very short period of time that actually we're talking about autism, and there was a diagnosis that wasn't even Sophie's to have, and under 2 psychiatrists, 2, not 1,
3.
3. Oh, 3. Even worse, Sophie. Even worse. And I think we said at the time that nobody had actually asked Sophie what she ever ate, and that was astonishing for me. So over to you. I'll put it back to 7 minutes. Off you go.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I was diagnosed with autism last year at the age of 30. But I there weren't really many signs of it in my childhood, other than I was chronically shy. But as I went through my teenage years, things started to go funny, and I developed my eating disorder. I developed quite severe mental health issues, and my contact with mental health services started off as being given a leaflet for stress, just really low level interventions. And obviously with unmanaged mental health conditions, things escalated over the years. But at the same time, I did a degree in clinical psychology. I did a master's degree in cognitive rehabilitation, and huge parts of the studying was around autism. But what I was learning on those courses was nothing to do with me. It was all very male centric, very kind of older fashioned picture of what autism looks like. So I never recognized that within myself at all. But what happened when I left university and tried to enter the workplace towards the role of a clinical psychologist, is it all just fell apart. I couldn't work with people. I couldn't manage my emotions. My eating was absolute haywire by that point. And I had to step away from that career choice and take a break. And I'm still taking a break in that job 7 years later, which is how much I needed that break. But what happened throughout these years is I got a number of diagnoses. They were just piling up and piling up and piling up. I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, emotionally unstable by 3 different psychiatrists, trichotillomania, which is compulsive hair pulling, and the list goes on. And actually it makes sense that all actually falls under one thing. But what happened with all these misdiagnoses is that it adds on to the shame, because I'm told, this is what's wrong with you, this is how to fix it. And when that doesn't work, I felt very broken, and I felt very much like I should be feeling better by now, and I'm not, and for some reason that's my fault. And that should is the voice of the eating disorder. It's that very kind of critical voice. And I absolutely felt broken. And by the end, I said to my GP, I think I'm autistic. And she said, we're not going to help you. You need to take responsibility for your mental health. You can't keep coming to us. It's just so shaming and so antithetical to what I was actually doing, which is trying to take responsibility. So, you know, I had the privilege of paying for private assessment, and that finally I got the diagnosis. But actually, Bernie, when I did my lifeline work with you, you were the first professional to ever validate my suspicions of autism and to validate my experience, because I talked about how I cried so much as a baby, and you said, well, that sounds quite like an autistic thing because of the anxiety you were experiencing. So I got my diagnosis, and I've had eating disorder therapy since then, or throughout that and since then. And, you know, the therapy hasn't just helped me to work through my eating disorder, but it's helped me to work through the autism as well, because my therapist was so client-centered, like you talked about at the beginning, really helped me to understand myself. And like Belinda mentioned, overwhelm, you know, that was a really key thing that I had no idea how much that impacted in my life. And, you know, when you Google autism, I don't see overwhelm. I don't see that as a thing. That doesn't come back. So I never even realized I experienced it.
Absolutely.
It affects me so much.
Yeah. And
especially around eating, you know, when I'm overwhelmed, I can't think about what I'm going to eat. I can't follow a recipe or do any cooking. And then, you know, at the same time, my sensitivities may be increased. My sensitivities around taste and heat in food and drinks. So it all kind of plays into each other, and you can't sort one without the other. In addition, I didn't realize that emotional regulation was such a big feature of autism. And that, for me, that's a massive thing. And again, if I'm emotionally dysregulated, food is a massive helper in that, because it can kind of have a very quick effect on me to regulate my emotions. And in the long term, it's not helpful. In the short term, it is. So it's inevitable that I would have ended up turning to food to help me with that.
Absolutely, which is what happens so much, isn't it? So much. So you've still got 2 minutes. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, just take it, because you kind of have phrased this around, you know, what can a therapist do to support? And like I said, it's about that person-centered focus. You know, I felt like I went on a journey with my therapist, and we were learning about it together, and just absolutely being supportive and empathic through this whole thing, which, being autistic, is quite rare for people around me. Usually people are feeling like, you know, you're being difficult, Sophie, or you're being a bit difficult again, or that's just Sophie, she's very sensitive. But, you know, to have that therapeutic relationship really helps to undo a lot of the very damaging relationships I've had with health professionals. So it's really important. And you were, I think, if I remember, you were put into rehab a couple of times as well, and you went through all the that say that you were an addict and you had to deal with your addiction. I was told that I was addicted to sugar and white flour, and that I could never eat them ever again. And that was 3 rehab stints of that. So naturally, when I ended up relapsing on sugar and white flour, it was just, the shame was just immense. Absolutely, beyond huge. Yeah, absolutely. And the support I've had from my therapist from the National Centre for Eating Disorders has been amazing. I've never been told that I can eat whatever I want and give myself permission to eat, and all of that stuff has been life-changing. Exactly. And you said so beautifully, Sophie, something about that person-centered being with you, and thank you very much, Sophie. I'm aware that that's another time. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Really, truly, I feel really quite touched with everything. So and thank you both. And who would like to go on next? We're doing very well. We're getting through it. So either Ross, I think Ross, we said you were going to go third. Rosalind. Oh, and Rosalind, I just need to say that Rosalind is 80% deaf, so we have to be aware of that. I did say maybe we could have people could take their camera off, but Ross was fine not to. Fine. And now, once again, somebody else that has trained with me and done a breakthrough with me.
So tell me how we can all help. Ross, tell me what we can do.
Oh, well, first of all, I just want to say sorry, I'm a bit emotional from Sophie's talk there, so just forgive me for a minute. Yeah, so I am 80% deaf, but growing up, I didn't have any issues with my hearing, so I just want to make that clear, because I think in case that's what you might be thinking, because I think that would have had a profound effect on me, even more so than my dyslexia and dyspraxia, which I have. I came across Bernie on social media, and being a trainee counsellor and in my diploma years, I asked her if I could join for a training session, one of her wonderful training sessions, to which I went along, and I was sort of quite taken aback in a very lovely way by the validation and empathy that seemed to surround 2 days of training. And I went away feeling quite different about the eating disorder which I have, which is more of a compulsive situation, probably brought about by quite unpleasant upbringing, full of material stuff, but not a lot else. And I think really listening to everyone and learning and having therapy and doing all the things I'm doing, I think really eating probably as a form of comfort, emotional comfort, escapism, all sorts. And right now, being in therapy, as I said, and having everything come to a head, I think it's actually worse than it's ever been. And I think that is probably because I'm just about to turn a corner, I hope. So the title and label of the possibility of being a bit more on the spectrum than I thought I was has been mentioned, and on reflection I think that could be right. And I think that when people come to see you as therapists, I mentioned to Bernie in an email earlier today, I think the counsellors, from what I can understand, can't diagnose. So I just wonder if clinical psychologists might be brought on board at some point with clients to, if necessary, and if people think it's necessary, to have yes, you might be, or yes, you are. And to have that label for me, although I haven't been diagnosed yet, to me personally would be valuable, because then I can work backwards and work out how and why. I'm quite analytical. So for me, it'd be helpful, but I understand why it might not be helpful for some.
Exactly.
I don't have my... Sorry?
I said exactly. Carry on.
Yeah. Maybe not exactly. I don't know. But for me, I mean, Bernie's been speaking to me about what I'm going to speak about. What's one thing that would really help? And I think I have to say, from my experience with therapists myself, will be empathy. There's a reason why I don't like to eat in front of people. There's a reason why I don't like to exercise. There's a reason for all these things. It's shame. It's guilt. It's all the aforementioned things that Belinda and Sophie have been talking about. For me personally, I sometimes will eat and then get rid of the food from my mouth, which I thought was the most horrific thing ever, and I was the only person in the world to do it. But apparently it's something that's quite normal within eating disorder people like myself. And I think the impact of it on the lives and the people around you, the eating disorder can spill over onto relations, onto children. The comments of professionals that aren't trained, clinical psychologists. I went to see a clinical psychologist, a young gentleman, who suggested that I got off the couch, sign up for a 5K run, and got rid of the chocolate in my house, and that was it. I mean, quite awful, really, looking back on it. So I have give you a bit more of a background. I think my mum is probably undiagnosed Asperger's. My father's a very strange man, so I don't know about him. My son has attention deficit disorder. My older son is Asperger's. So I think the likelihood of me having some traits is quite high. My younger son finds it very difficult to eat. So obviously we've got two ends of the spectrum in the house. So we have to have food about. Food is evident everywhere, high calorie foods. So I think these things should be taken into account when speaking to people, not just how they are diverse in their lives, cultures and whatever, but how diverse the household is as a whole. You know, if you're living alone, it's easy to get all the crisps, sweets and chocolates and high calorie food. But if you have a family of 4, like you, Belinda, or whatever, it may not be. Everyone's on a different path. But I think really the word is empathy. I think that the shame, the judgment that I've had has been quite astounding from all walks of life.
Yeah, the shame and the judgment, it is absolutely crippling. And Ross said something very, very useful. Zoe, I'll let Zoe in. Very amazing earlier on, that we also need to be careful, and we'll be discussing that obviously, and we've been doing so. We have to be very careful how we bring up the possibility that the client is neurodivergent, and that will be coming out very much in the training, because for some people it may be, oh my goodness, is it your birthday? What issues? Here comes Zoe, who we all know very well from the Twitter world. Zoe's arrived. Okay, thank you so much. You've got 1 minute. Is there anything you'd like to actually add to that before the bell goes off again? And so,
I think it's a very interesting fact that Melinda was saying about sort of writing down what you eat and the apps and so on. I've also never been able to sort of keep account of what I eat, but I think it possibly slightly different from Linda, who I heard your reasons, Belinda, but with me I think it's more about something much more basic, and that is, can I really tell anybody what I actually eat? Can I do that? It's more guilt than having the time to write it down. It's more, oh my God, if I tell them that, again, down to the guilt and the shame. Can I really do that? I know they're going to tell me to stop the chocolate. I know they're going to do this. Why should I write it down? You know, it's more a fight with myself.
and
So it's a bit of a different reason.
Yeah, and why would, I mean, that's so huge in the work that we need to do to allow the client to really be to know we're really there and we're not judging in any way. And I think that Belinda and Sophie and you know, have you said have had experiences of therapists that have listened. Now comes our very naughty Zoe. Were you happy birthday before we start? So is it the grand old age of 30 now?
Yeah, so it's my birthday on Tuesday, so we're having a bit of an office party. So I've just finished with service users, walked back in the room and I had a headband on, got given a glass of Prosecco, and I said, I've got to go. I'm not done yet. I do apologise about that, please. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Zoe, you always make me laugh, Zoe. And are we okay for Adam to go on that, and then you can go on straight after? So Adam, I know from Twitter, and he's an amazing ambassador and stands up for people regardless of whatever shape or size they are, and we know him very, very well. So you have your 7 minutes now, Adam, and great to have you here.
Thanks, Bernie. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you everyone else for sharing your stories too. It's been really quite emotional actually, listening to them, but really enlightening too. I'll start off by saying I'm not officially diagnosed neurodivergent yet. I'm going through the process. Many reasons I haven't been, but essentially it was, again, through childhood, it was sort of, there wasn't many signs. You know, the only signs really was I was constantly looking back for validation from my mum. I'd follow orders to the letter. So at 2 years old, I'd stand in the line at Argos while I took my brother to go to the toilet somewhere else, you know, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And through exams as well, I'd always, you know, get 98%, be accused of making silly mistakes, you know, feel really guilty for doing that as well. But knowing now that it's probably ADHD, that was the factor, you know, my focus just went. Really big factor in that, really. But my eating disorder really started with everything when I transitioned into secondary school. I started with some quite major bowel issues as well. And the transition, I was sort of taken away from my friendship group, which took me out of my comfort zone a lot. And the thing I turned to was food. I don't know why. I think it was probably linked to the bowel issues as well, because I had really bad sort of overload with the pain that I was getting from eating. So I think that definitely was a factor into it as well. But I remember in the time I remember back at school was one was the fact that I didn't want to go to school. So I, do everything I could to get out of lessons, get out of PE, get out of everything like that. And this was from someone who was really confident playing football all the time, happy-go-lucky, the one who was always seen as the one who would be fine. But the other time was that I'd spend lunchtimes pacing the corridors looking for something. I don't know what I was looking for, but just on my own. And I just look back at that kid and I feel so sorry for him. And it sounds really bad, but that was me. It makes me upset to think that that kid could still be in school now as well and not be picked up, that they might be neurodivergent, but also not be picked up they've got an eating disorder as well. The first contact I had with the medical profession was my GP. After about 2 weeks, my family, who have been my only rock throughout all this, took me to the GP, who told me to go away and eat more. And that was it for about 5 years. I then went to see a CAMS psychologist when I was 17, I think, when I started to have another relapse. I broke my foot, which changed my routine, took me out of my comfort zone again. I'd also developed an exercise addiction by then because I'd been playing semi-professional football for a while. And the psychologist told me, you don't have an eating disorder, but didn't go any further than that. And it all came to a head when I was at uni and ended up having metabolic acidosis due to my eating disorder. I just couldn't cope anymore. But I've never received any support for my eating disorder formally. The one time I was sort of there was under a crisis team after I was discharged from hospital. And basically, because I'm a man and because I didn't present in a typical way, they spent 6 months trying to fit me into a funding bracket and never could. They also taught me how to calorie count, which wasn't a good idea. But anyway, that's another point. Yeah, it was just, I don't think anyone ever picked it up, because every time I've tried to do something, every time I've tried to see someone, every time any advice has been given to me, it's just, oh, just do this, just make these changes. And I don't think people understand how overwhelming one small change can be.
Awesome.
It might seem like a really small change, but in the grand scheme of things, it's huge. I saw a dietitian for a while. My parents paid for a dietitian for a while for me, but it was every week I was getting homework to, try this, try that. And every week I'd have to come back and say I didn't do it. And it'd be like, why didn't you do it? I don't know why I didn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Why didn't you log your food? And I think, Rosalind, what you were saying about the guilt, that's a huge thing as well, because for me, it was guilt in another way. It was guilt that I wasn't doing what I should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I felt like I should be doing better and doing more. And I never could. And I didn't understand why. I couldn't focus on something for long enough. So I'd make a change, but then couldn't stick at it. But then I'd be so anxious about making the change and trying to stick at it that I'd just get overwhelmed and go backwards. And that was a huge thing about exercise as well. So my exercise addiction happens that if I do any exercise at all, I have to, that's my baseline. And then if I do a bit more one day, that's my new baseline. And I do more and more and more to the extent where I get to a crisis and then stop altogether. And then the cycle repeats. So for me, I've got to try and stop exercising. But doing that, A, in a society that tries to pull you back, and B, when you've got ADHD trying to push you forward as well, and trying to compulse you and into doing things, it's a nightmare to deal with, and the overwhelm that comes with it. I recently had to take 6 months off work because I've been saying yes to everything and I couldn't manage it. But it all just comes to a head, and people always say, eating disorders, do you want to lose weight? Do you want to look? No, I don't know why I do it. There's no why to it. It's just I have to do things. So I think really for me, what I'd love to see is just, I think empathy, massively, work with someone. Therapists need to understand autism, ADHD, neurodivergence more, and understand how diverse it is. For the second thing, it's massively undiagnosed in women and girls, and adults as well. We have to do better at that. But we don't expect a therapist to know everything, but come on the journey with us and try and understand us. Don't tell me to do something and then get at me for not doing it, or say do something different or try it in a different way. Why don't we just work together to try and find the best quality of life for me as an individual? I'm never not going to be autistic. I'm never not going to be ADHD. So I'm always going to have issues that I've got to manage. I'm never going to be free of everything. So why don't we just find a way to try and best manage everything so I don't get overwhelmed every 2 seconds? That's my real ask. And that's what I'd love to see.
Oh, wow. And Adam, I feel quite choked listening to you. Thank you. And we've got 1 minute to go. And anything else you'd like to add?
I'd just like to say that when you've met one person, one neurodivergent person, you've met one neurodivergent person, and it can affect everyone in every different way. It doesn't just affect restrictive eating disorders, as you can see, right? It affects eating disorders of everyone, of every body size. And we just have to be aware of the diversity that eating disorders present themselves in. But there's a huge link between eating disorders and neurodivergence. So if you're not questioning neurodivergence, then you should be.
Thank you. That was incredible. Thank you so much. And thank you. I'm speechless, really. Thank you. And then we come to Miss Zoe, the naughty one, the naughty one, clearly on the panel, and a plug for Sophie before we start. Excellent book, Inside My Head. It's Living with Atypical Anorexia, and this is Zoe's story. Now, Zoe, I have had the pleasure to do a breakthrough with back a long time now, it seems. And I said at the time, did you, is there, because so you've been given atypical anorexia, was there anything else that they, that perhaps they suggested when they saw you? She said, because lovely Zoe can swear quite a lot, and she went, well, I won't say the word. so she said, well, isn't effing atypical anorexia enough? And I said, but yeah, I've got a real curiosity about ADHD. Well, we since know for an absolute fact that is Zoe, and Zoe is an amazing ambassador and worked very, very hard in this field. And let's hear your story, Zoe. And you have got 7 minutes.
Time starts now. That scared me.
And it's your birthday. And if you can see that Adam and Sophie have gone off screen for a while, that is very usual. That is very usual. Off you go.
Thank you, my lovely. Yeah, so obviously, bless your heart, I met you when it was in a relapse, actually. But what baffles me is how the heck I got to the age of 28 before anyone picked up on it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It baffles me because, yes, at school, I wasn't necessarily labelled the naughty child because I did so well in some lessons, but in other lessons, I just didn't care. I just couldn't. It's not because I just couldn't physically get it, I guess. I just couldn't focus. So in maths, I remember my maths teacher, it's not funny, but I remember my maths teacher saying that I was too stupid to learn. Mm-hmm. But yet in music, I was perfect A-star student. And the school couldn't understand why that was, because some lessons, amazing concentration, but in others, nah, I'm not interested. But so even back at school, it seems so obvious now. But yeah, at the time it's, she's just messing about, she's just being lazy, whatever. Bizarre. But then obviously, I did face quite a lot of trauma and things in my past, and I was an addict for a while, interestingly enough. So I did use drugs, and I was told, oh, you've got a really addictive personality. And again, now looking back, it's like, oh, that's another, yeah, exactly. How? So I went through, addiction treatment, and no one picked up on it. People would ask me in addiction services, oh, how are you feeling? I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you, I can't figure it out. I'm scatty, I guess. But then obviously I'd like to I am bogged under that hyperfixating on stuff. So when I decided that I was going to lose weight, I was going to lose weight, and I was going to do it well. So I literally put all of my energy and focus. I can't describe the feeling, but that was it. I was going to do it. So of course I very, very quickly spiraled into those sort of eating disorder behaviours. And it kind of gave me some sort of, I don't know, dopamine hit, I guess, because I felt like I was doing well at this. Yeah, because obviously I was, she's scatty, she's a bit of an idiot. So actually being praised by losing weight, it was like, oh, I'm doing well, this is good, I'm going to keep doing this because I'm getting that hit that I desperately need, so to speak.
Yes.
So yeah, and then obviously when I entered eating disorder treatment, my goodness, fill out these food diaries. Okay, I will fill them out and I will make sure I do them 1010% perfectly. And I can't tell you how many hours I would spend on doing that one little task, because I had to do it so perfectly in case, yeah. But if I wasn't in the mood to do it, it would take such effort to do. So like, I'd sit down with it in front of me and be like, come on, I need to do this. But I really don't want to. I'd much rather be, you know, doing this instead. Or, no, come on, Zoe, concentrate. Yeah, but I don't know. I can't tell you the frustration. And then obviously if I sent them in late, which was very common because I'll just forget to send them because I am forgetful. The backlash, I guess. Oh, you obviously don't want to recover. Or actually would have sent them. You're not putting 100% effort in. So I really am trying. I really am. I just forget. Unless if you send me like a reminder because I had to send them in like the day before my appointment, if that makes sense. Unless if you send me a reminder to tell me, just a reminder to send your meal plans in, it's gone. It's out of my head. I'm not going to do it. Really.
Well, and that's been true, hasn't it, Zoe? So as you both said, both you and Christina, that's something about the ADH mind, you know, about actually forget both double booking that you're coming on here at 5 o'clock. So it's like, how often do I hear this? But you are on and you are here, and because you were you were extremely ill with eating disorder. I mean, you're looking amazing now, and you're doing great stuff out there. And yet you were extremely ill, and we followed you. I found you originally on as Barefoot Rebel, and watched your incredible TED tube and felt very, very touched at the time. So when you got in touch with me a good year or later, it was really good. So you got 2-3 more minutes. So what else do you want to tell us? How can we help? How can we help? What can we all do?
Let me do things my way. I know it sounds ridiculous, but again, trying to write out thought diaries and stuff like that, I'm not going to do it. So one of the things that I do with my counsellor now, weirdly, is I actually give him a playlist. How I'm feeling, because I am a musician. Yeah. I play the flute, I play ukulele, of course I do, because I have fixated on it. So yeah. So actually submitting something like that, I can do so much easier than writing out paragraphs. So that's worked really well. Don't shout at me if I'm fidgeting, because they used to accuse me of in day program of sitting there fidgeting, and it's like, stop it, sit still, because I know what you're doing, you're trying to burn those calories. I wasn't, I just couldn't bloody sit still. I know.
When you had the breakthrough transformation with me, I mean, you were just flying around the room. I was thinking, there she's gone, there she's gone, there she's gone.
Like, you can't see it now, but we've got like, I'm in the office. It's like a little yoga sort of room, so I've got a big exercise ball here that my foot's like bouncing around on. But just allow me to have fidget toys. It's not because I'm trying to burn calories. It's generally, if I can keep my hands busy or my feet busy, I can focus. But if you want me to sit completely still, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
It's, I'm not trying to trick you, I promise. If I need to stand up, if I need to stand up or take my shoes off again, it's not me being awkward. It will help me concentrate if I've got some sort of feeling.
Exactly. And you've got 1 more minute, and there's something about, yes, again, meeting the client where they are, not where we are.
Again, like Adam said, we are all so different. So what works for me might not work for someone else. It's just spending time with that service user, with that client, to explore different options, I guess. Let them, if it didn't work, it's not our fault. Let's just see what does work. Let's try different things.
Exactly, which is, if we get too rigid, we miss the very person we're trying to find. And that's your time up. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you're going to have a very lovely birthday where you'll be putting that hat back on and having fun. Yeah. Christina, she actually turned up on that hat. She came on.
It doesn't surprise me for a second.
And great to have Christina here once again, someone else who's trained with the National Centre and doing a lot of stuff out there with Beat, and has ADHD and very much a vocal voice, who originally I met on Twitter, like you all, which has been wonderful. The beauty of Twitter, for sure. So tell us about your story and what you'd like to see change, Christine, and how we can all help. And I'm going to put you on 7 minutes.
Okay, so I have atypical anorexia. I was diagnosed with anorexia when I was 13. I was pretty stereotypical for someone diagnosed with anorexia. I went to a private school, all girls school. I was very perfectionistic, very rigid in my thinking. I felt that I had to do things a certain way. And when I started losing weight, I was very, very good at losing weight. So I did it very quickly. I was bullied at school and I worried a lot about that. I was fat, as far as my bullies used to refer to me, and I lost a lot of weight so that I could be quite invisible to them. Didn't really work. My anorexia evolved into atypical anorexia when I was 15, 16, and I discovered poison alcohol, because I didn't know how to accommodate alcohol. And I used alcohol as a coping mechanism because it made everything in my head quiet, which is probably one of the first clues I should have realised I had ADHD. Inpatient when I was 21, came out, had a functional anorexic. I'm pretty close to alcoholic as well. I drank quite a lot of alcohol. And then I found out I was pregnant, and didn't really know what to do about that because it wasn't planned. But I now have a 10-year-old who I just had to tell to be very quiet because she was shrieking to her friend on the phone. And I have an 8-year-old as well. And I got very little help in my pregnancy. They sort of said that they thought I was too healthy to help because I was able to get pregnant. When I wanted to get better when my daughter was 2, because I realised that if I didn't get better, my daughter would probably end up with an eating disorder just like me, and the only way I could really stop that was to not have an eating disorder anymore and to recover. So I did, and I've never really felt like I fitted in with other people. I've always been a bit quirky, a bit odd. And it never really occurred to me that I could have ADHD until lockdown. And a friend who'd also been diagnosed with ADHD said, and also Zoe said, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD, when I was spoken to her? And I did the questionnaire and I was like, wow, I think I've got ADHD. I better look into this. And I was fortunate enough to be privately diagnosed by someone I work with. And they said that I was scoring quite highly on almost everything, and it made sense why I always put my keys in the fridge, or if I do something like write an essay for uni, then I'll do it all in 3 hours and then fall asleep for 2 hours afterwards. And I've been like that my whole life. That's the way my brain's always worked, that I can, if I need to do something and it's really interesting, I can do it, whereas it takes me to write an essay for uni, it takes me 4 hours to get to do it. And then I can do it in 2 hours. And learning that's it's actually the way that my brain works, and that not that I'm just really odd. It's been really great for me because it's made me realise that actually there's a reason the way I do things the way that I do, and I'm not just messy and disorganised and really rubbish at adult life. There's actually a reason that my brain's not working quite the way I expect it to. And knowing more about it's helped me to learn, having things like fidget toys and being able to like being able to do things like draw in meetings. That really helps me focus and keep myself where I'm supposed to be.
I'm going to say goodbye to Ross because Ross is leaving. Thank you so much, and catch up with you shortly. Sorry, Christina, keep going.
Well, what else do I need to say? What needs to change? I think that people can be described as sort of resistant to treatment because of the way that their minds work. Things like autism spectrum and ADHD, remembering to do things is a problem. I can hyper focus on the food that I've got to get, and I can worry about that all day long. But when I was doing food diaries, I couldn't remember to write in them at the time, and then I'd get to the end of the day and I'd be like, I don't remember how I felt at 9 o'clock this morning when I ate something. I think it was okay. I can't remember. And a lot of the time, I think that I came across the therapist as quite disinterested. I had quite black and white thinking, which is pretty common in an anorexic mind, but I very much thought that if I wasn't leaping out of bed, looking at my body and going, yes, everything is brilliant, I can eat whatever I want, do whatever I want, that I wasn't recovered and there wasn't really any point in doing it. And now that I've been diagnosed with ADHD, I kind of realised that being able to fly at something is kind of part of ADHD. And if you come up to sort of stumbling blocks and things, you tend to give up and be like, no, I can't be bothered with this. And I learned that by failing my driving test twice, because I had to learn to drive. And I realised that actually it's okay to fail. I never failed anything before in my life. I'd always done really well at things. And I realised that actually I would have to continue to work at this. And I would, even though I found it really boring and really dull, I just would have to keep going. And I started applying that to my eating disorder recovery and going, actually, if it's one small thing, that's not a complete disaster, that one small thing hasn't immediately led to your eating disorder being cured. I really struggled with the idea that I would go into therapy and it would be a long thing. I'm very much of I want things done now, and I don't want to have to worry about them anymore. And I think that some people with ADHD really struggle to commit to therapy, to commit to recovery, because they think it's just takes so long and it's just so complicated, and you get to a point where you're like,
exactly, I want it and I want it now.
Yeah.
And the hyper focus, I just so get you, Christina. It's that sort of, we can keep on going for hours of what we're interested in, but dear me, do not make us or invite us to do what we don't not interested in.
And that's the thing. I did a lot of the time I didn't want to recover. I wanted to recover in theory, but I wanted to recover on terms that I thought were acceptable. So I wanted to recover into a weight that I liked the idea of, and none of the things, and I didn't want to address how I felt about my eating disorder. I just wanted to recover and be able to eat everything and be able to go out for meals with my friends and not worry about it. I didn't really want to do any of the kind of messy stuff and see what happened if I went a pound over the weight that I wanted to be. I was like, nah, I can't deal with that. I'll do it another time, it'll come to me later type thing.
And I'm aware that that's the 7 minutes. Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add as a final to all these therapists out there who are listening to this amazing conversation about their stories, which have been very, very touching, by the way?
I think one of the things that can be really difficult with people with ADHD is impulsive behaviour. So I had a lot of impulsive behaviour around alcohol and to some extent drugs when I was really struggling with my eating disorder, and finding affection from, wanting boyfriends and things. I really sort of hyper fixated on that would make my eating disorder better. It would be the solution type thing. And I really having an approach where you look at the sort of impulsive behavior of someone with ADHD, and the fact that they would I had to stop drinking because I got pregnant with my daughter, but I don't know how easy I would have found it to do that, because it was a crutch for me, and it was something I did when I was stressed so that I didn't have to listen to how I felt about food. And I made
the noise in your head, the ADHD.
I made quite bad decisions, particularly when I came out of inpatient treatment. I made some, if I could delete the year 2006 from my brain, I would love to do that, because it was absolutely horrible, and I made some dreadful decisions and lost some friends. And I think things like that kind of impulsive behavior, burning bridges of people around you and isolating yourself and harming yourself in that way that people may not think about. And you may think of someone as having a personality disorder or something like that, but actually it might be ADHD, and it might be not being able to control your impulses to do something stupid, or drink too much, or take drugs, or get off with your friend's boyfriend. Those are the sort of things that I was not really thinking about doing. And I imagine I probably could have got diagnosed with a personality disorder, but it was actually just ADHD.
Well, you missed that at the beginning, actually, Christina, because that was a conversation we were having. Because Sophie, God bless her, she's actually has been given 3 diagnoses of EUPD, and not one of them was true. It's like, yeah, we have to be really careful that we don't assume to know, And I'm aware we've got 5 minutes, and it's been absolutely fantastic. I cannot thank you all enough. It's been an absolute gift, and it's certainly going to be a total gift for the Zoom room that's watching you all. So anything anyone just want to check out and give some thoughts about what you've picked up, or anything you want to say to us lot going forward? People learn from this Zoom incredible. There's Christina.
In group therapy, if you've got a group of people with ADHD, it's quite hard for us not to interrupt each other and over talk. And I think a lot of neurotypical people think that you're being quite rude when you do that, but it's just, you get really excited and you have an idea and you can't help it. And Zoe's put her hand up because I always have to do that, so I've got my idea there. When Adam and I did a podcast and like trying to condense ourselves into like 10 minutes was impossible because we just couldn't.
In fact, Christian, everyone was very wise enough to say that, you know, that basically that they were going to, that I was to allocate you all at a time, because otherwise it would have turned into goodness knows what. And I've got 2 hands up. I got Zoe's up and I got Sophie's up. So who wants to talk first? Speak first, even.
Both too polite, aren't we? It was like, sorry about that. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh no, yeah, group therapy. Second, what Christina said, again, I was either told off for interrupting or told off for not participating enough. So I couldn't help it. If I've got a thought, then or again, write it down, something, because by the time it got to my turn, I'd forgotten what I was going to say. I can't remember. Similar to what's just happened, because I had a point and it's gone.
Get in there really quickly.
Perfect example. But yeah, just second what Christina said around group therapy, it is exhausting for us, you know. I did benefit from it, of course I did, but I was so knackered afterwards, so knackered. When I quite often had group therapy and then a one-to-one, and I couldn't engage in that one-to-one because I was gone. It was too much.
Too much. In fact, Sophie had the same experience. So, you know, about having to be in group therapy, and for some people, it's just, and for me, it's a form of abuse. We need to be very careful about people who are autistic and find being in groups excruciating. So, Sophie, please, can we hear from you? And we now have 2 minutes before we end.
We've talked a lot about the therapist being flexible to the client and being with the client, but I think it's important to remember, you know, coming to eating disorder therapy, it's quite prescriptive at the start. You know, do a food diary, this is how you do a food diary, all of this. And the turning point for me was when I reminded that I could decide how to do it. So when the food plan wasn't working for me, I had to be given permission to do it differently and to find the way that worked for me. I think being autistic, I've been told to fit in so many boxes that it never occurred to me that I could push back and say, this isn't working, let's do it differently.
Wow, absolutely. I could not agree more. And that is absolutely spot on, because, you know, that's the thing about, we must meet the person in the room and give them permission, which is, I know the therapist who works with you had absolutely done, and you were able to take back your power and be listened to how you wanted to work. And I was, yeah, I'm in all of that, Sophie, with all of you. And Zoe?
Sorry, I'm on it now, aren't I? Yeah, again, second what you just said, when something's not working, I would quite often feel like, oh, it's my fault. It's not, you know, that the treatment's wrong, it's me that's wrong, which of course would feed into that low self-esteem, which then of course would fuel that eating disorder voice a little bit more. So just, yeah, be wary of that one, because it's not necessarily that, again, I can't do it or whatever, it's just, it's not working for me, and the impact that could be having on my already shattered self-esteem.
Yeah, I mean, Zoe, that's it, isn't it? My already shattered self-esteem. And I think what's really come through this Zoom room today has been very, very much how shaming and stigmatizing if we get you wrong, if we don't see you, if our eyes are untrained and we don't see you. And we'll take one more lovely comment from Christina, and I'll allow us all to just disappear and go and do what we do in the evening.
I was just going to say exactly what David was saying. I think those of us, especially with undiagnosed autism and ADHD, find yourself being very different. You feel very different to people around you. You don't understand why people find it so easy to make relationships and succeed in things, and I think that really contributes to those feelings of isolation and feeling that you are sort of special or different, and that really feeds into your eating disorder thoughts that no one can understand you and no one will ever be able to get you and fix you. My son's going through a sort of autistic spectrum disorder at the moment, and he's saying things like, oh, I don't think I'm very good at being a boy because I'm not good at boy things, and he feels different and other because he doesn't understand that he's different. And that's making him feel stigmatized and outside of everything and worry about who he is, when actually it's just that he's probably got undiagnosed autistic spectrum disorder.
Just putting in there, Christina, yeah, relate to that so much. Just so much relate to what you said about your son there. So
much. Wow. Thank you all so much. It's been an hour that I will always remember.